And you're in the Philippines?
Sorry.
No, that's
Yes,
okay.
I'm in the Philippines.
Okay, very cool.
Right. And I do have friends here that follow you too because of GNM. I'm the founder of GHK in the Philippines.
Oh,
And so
so
I'm
awesome.
spreading it there and all that. Okay, I'm going to
Amazing.
start. Okay, welcome everybody, and thank you for tuning into this episode of Biohacking and Beyond. I couldn't be more excited to have this special guest on my podcast as we share similar interests in terms of GHK, Germanische Heilkunde, or GNM, Germanic New Medicine, as well as self-balancing somatic work. So let me introduce him briefly. Brandon Bozarth is a spiritual coach, intuitive guide, and channeler dedicated to helping people transform their unconscious beliefs. He guides individuals towards achieving clarity of mind, enabling them to experience freedom and passion in their relationships, business, health, and spirituality. With over 1,000 clients, Brandon integrates Germanic New Medicine, the biological laws, and self-inquiry techniques heal psychosomatic disease. Welcome, Brandon. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm really excited to be here, Ellie.
So what I'm really interested in is, Brandon, is how you got started. When you got started on this path, and if we were to connect the dots backwards, would we be able to trace inclinations towards this kind of work early on?
So are you referring to the GHK path or kind of the overarching path?
Larger path.
Yeah, okay, great. There's a story I often tell because it was such a turning point. So I think I'll go there. This was in 2000. Well, I'll start in high school because there were some really important seeds that were planted. I had an older brother, and he would show me these documentaries that we would probably, for most people, pre-2020, pre-pandemic, would call conspiracy theories, but a lot of them turned out to be just how reality is, and especially in the United States. And so I started to experience this unconditioning process of, oh, the education system, the healthcare system, the financial system, a lot of this isn't as it seems. And I started a club my freshman year in high school to just learn the truth, what's true. And I had a lot of those deeper questions kind of ingrained in me from a young age, and was fortunate to attract mentors that would give me books and resources at a really young age. And so there's always been this fire in my heart for the truth. And fast forward probably about 2015, I was leaving what I thought was going to be my career, which was in network marketing. And I was speaking and building sales teams in different parts of the US, speaking in front of audiences. I just decided I knew something this wasn't the representative of my passion and what I'm here to do, or it just didn't feel most me. And where 99% of it I can justify, the 1% was louder than the 99. And I said, okay, I have to let all of this go. It's like I achieved a moderate level of success, and it was empty. I was depressed. I was drinking and, going out every weekend and partying. And it was just a very empty way of living. And one day I just decided, I'm going to follow the impulse of excitement and passion and curiosity, regardless of if there's an obvious path to make money. Even if everything gets taken from me, I lose everything. I have to be true to myself, and but I didn't really know what that was. So day to day, it would look like writing in my journal, working out, moving my body, eating well, and then just sharing my experience of what I've learned thus far in life. And I decided to put out a newsletter. And long story short, one evening, my newsletter landed in the inbox of a woman in Australia moments before she was going to take her own life. And she was in Australia. She had a handful of sleeping pills. She was in her car in a parking lot looking at the beach, and she was going to take the sleeping pills and then go into the water and sleep and drown. And she had a moment, kind of a revelation or divine intervention. Or she called them her guides, said, hey, before you take those pills, turn the radio on. And she did. And a song played. And word for word, the song said, you should stay a little bit longer. And she said, wow. And she started crying. In that next moment, she got my email. And my email was titled, I'm excited to die. But I was referring to ego death, of course, not physical death, which, anyone that's suicidal is yearning for a certain aspect of them to die, namely the aspect that's suffering, not their actual life. And so she resonated with the email, and she responded and said, hey, I want you to coach me. And I said, what's that? I'm not a coach. And I said, let's get on a phone call and I'll see if I can help you. And we got on the phone call, and it was such a powerful conversation. She had a profound breakthrough. I had a profound breakthrough. And she said, how much I want you to coach me. And I said, okay. She goes, how much do you charge? And I just looked at how much what my bills were. So I said, if you pay my bills, I'll coach you as much as you want. And that was my first client. And about 6 months in, she had such a radical change in her. Now I would see curing her or resolving self-evaluation, resolving primarily self-evaluation in the form of weight gain, joint pain, muscle aches, that sort of thing. But she completely changed her relationship with her father, who used to abuse her, who was on his deathbed. So they got to like be with the end of his life in a really good way. And it was such a powerful experience. I said, okay, this must be one reason or one primary of my gifts, how I'm meant to serve. So I sought out mentorship, and one thing led to another. And I moved to LA, Los Angeles, with the last $300 in my bank account, and lived on the couch of a mentor that I met through Facebook. I think it was someone sent me an article, and I found him. It was like a top 25, something like philanthropists or something under 30. And I found him, and I reached out to him, and it was like a soul colliding conversation where it was like, wow, there's some work for us to do. And I booked a flight, and I took everything I own. I lived on his couch for a few months, and he taught me everything he knew. He put me through his workshops. He's a well-known, pretty renowned men's coach who's worked with men all over the world and in deep transformational work, deep trauma healing. For the next 2 years, he took me around the world, and we did workshops together. And I just really I got this immersive experience from someone who I would consider a master coach. And then I started my own, kind of carved my own path from there. And it was only about a year and a half ago that I actually found German New Medicine, GHK. And that was because I never had anything chronic in my life, but I had a really intense, we could use the word, I don't like it too much, but it's accurate, toxic kind of relationship that, oh my God, you want symptoms? Get in a toxic relationship. You're gonna get constellated, and that's how you do it. So it was a wake-up call. And up to that point, I thought functional medicine represented the highest degree of truth in the realm of our physical body. So it was like prevention, detox. I was detoxing all the time. I was vegan for 5 years. Well, simultaneously, I'm going on this health journey, and I'm at the furthest level. I mean, from veganism, raw veganism, carnivore, keto, detoxing every few weeks, living mucus free. I mean, everything. I did it all. People go, well, you didn't do it right. It's like, no, I did all of it. I mean, and still, fruit can't turn off a special biological program, or an herb can't. So it's like, no matter what, it was like I couldn't find resolution, and I started to experience some chronic symptoms. And I always knew, because of what I would see in these workshops, I'd have people, now I'm kind of time skipping from 2015 up until I started getting chronic symptoms, which was in about 2021. In my own retreats and workshops, which I would host in different parts of the world, I'd have people go into resolution in a 30-minute session. I mean, I had this one woman with IBS, chronic. It was in chronic, like she'd go to constipation, diarrhea, back and forth, back and forth. And to the degree in which she developed so many allergies that she could only eat liquids, and she was on an IV all the time because she had over 30 plus allergies. And she was really suffering. And we resolved an indigestible morsel. I didn't have the language at the time. In a retreat, instantly you could hear the healing phase come on. Everyone could hear her. She had some trauma as a child that she couldn't digest. And in the revealing it to the group, just like the telling of the secret almost, it resolved right away. Everyone could hear the rumbling in her guts, and she runs to the bathroom. She comes out and she's glowing. She goes, oh my God, I feel so good. And I just have this feeling, all my allergies are resolved. I'm going to go in the kitchen and eat. And she ate, and all of her allergies were gone just like that. And the day before, they weren't. And to this day, she's still a friend of mine. She doesn't have IBS. And so that was something that I just wrote off. I said, oh, it's, I understand the mind-body connection, especially our generation. We're kind of brought up with that being found fact. Like, that's true. but I didn't have the science or the understanding to connect the dots, hindsight. So once I found GHK, I got to look at all these and that was just one of many. I had ones with it wasn't breast cancer, it was I'm forgetting what it was, either breast or lung cancer, a woman that resolved after a week-long retreat where she had a scan previous and then she went to get another scan 2 weeks later and there was nothing on the scan. And so we had all these moments where this was happening, and now I can go, oh my God, every single one mapped, with the exception of one, but every single one mapped right over the GHK model. And it was like, wow. It was really amazing when I really started to dive into GHK. So much in hindsight was connected, so much about my symptoms. I experienced a lot of resolution and brought together the worlds where I was unknowingly or unintentionally supporting people in their resolution, but didn't have the terminology or the precision that then the map of GHK offered. And in the marriage of the inquiry and GHK, there's a really expression of my work that's really only been being put out there maybe the last year now.
Wow. Gosh, so much to unpack. And in the middle of all of that, I was like getting goosebumps because I don't know if you've heard of the saying by Rumi, once you start to walk on the way appears. And I feel that kind of also happened to you, kind of like
Absolutely.
take this turn, but why? I don't know what's out there. Just do it. Follow your nose. And I kind of also had the same kind of what you call a second mountain. It's like the mountain that you were meant to build. And I love all of these success stories that you were talking about and how you married both of them. What I wanted to ask was, in one of your interviews, and I wanted to say also that as a biohacker, I went through vegan, raw vegan, carnivore, keto, carnivore, paleo, and all of that,
Yeah.
and found out really it's not about the food. Though food can support the vital energy, the support system, it's not about that. So I love that you kind of emphasize that. So in one of your interviews, I heard that you had a terrible experience with mold. And mold is such a big topic in the biohacking world because my mentor, Dave Asprey, he produced a film called Moldy. And I'd love to know how you use GHK to kind of dissect your own psyche-brain organ relay that led to that SBS or AKA disease, and what kind of self-somatic inquiry you would have used to clinch this using the GNM GHK lens.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because the mold, so with my understanding of GHK, I know the mold wasn't the problem, but the mold was after I left a relationship, and it didn't end in the most there was still conflict. I was conflict active for a while. And I entered another relationship while being conflict active. And as soon as I entered the next relationship, it was the first time that I really had maybe a 6 to 8 month intense hanging healing where it's like I was being reactivated and back conflict active probably every week, several times a week, not in a it almost felt like it was a new DHS, not just a little track. It was like it was really intense. And I wasn't able to, it was like I was chronically oscillating. I was in a hanging healing between conflict active and hanging healing. And so at first, there was some territory anger stuff. It was like, oh, this mold, it's invading. And, it's like the mold was the enemy. And that made everything worse. I mean, the fear, we're looking for another place to live, doing all this research on mold, the anxiety. And then as I continued to investigate, and this was after I exited the relationship, my relationship to mold changed. So I saw the mold as resolution. I stopped trying to detox. I mean, I was taking every powder and binder, and that was exhausting on my system to just be chugging powders and binders. And I just stopped. I just stopped and I just rested, and I fully gave into what I believe to be mold symptoms, which were really symptoms of my body saying you need to rest and repair. You were conflict active for about a year, maybe even a little over that, and not with just one DHS. It was territory anger, indigestible morsel, was overwhelmed conflict, and territory loss. So all of those in an intense way, maybe a few others in there, but I did get my brain scan with Dr. Sasha, so I've been able to confirm a lot of these.
Fabulous.
I let the mold just have its way with me. And I just rested. I probably had a good 2 months where I said, I'm completely taking off work and I'm going to honor this healing phase. And ever since then, everything There was also some separation conflicts. So there were all my skin rashes went away. My short-term memory loss was so bad. I mean, I would be, I would wake up, I'd walk into the kitchen. Why am I in the kitchen? Walk back in okay, I remember now. Let me go back to the kitchen. Wait, why am I here? It was, it's like I understood Alzheimer's. It's like, I think I'm having early onset. And obviously we know separation conflicts are the
Right.
root of many of these diseases, diseases, including Alzheimer's. So I, I just gave in and actually rested, and I separated myself from a relationship that was not good for me. Probably, yeah, 6 months after that process, it was exceptionally. I mean, I have a lot more I could say about how I resolve certain things, but
Mhm.
I just really focused on resolution and rest, and 90% of the mold symptoms relieved in that time.
Fantastic. I love stories like that. And I love Dr. Sasha. He and I are work a lot together on the Freya cohorts in the Asian
Oh, so cool.
we talk about JHK a lot. He's my favorite mentor, one of them. But I love that process. But I wanted to ask, when were you able to find a new residence? And if you did you still continue to have the symptoms in the new
No, I
residence?
just decided to stay.
Oh,
I
you
decided to stay because I said to myself, if I can't feel free and unafraid here, then and actually get my body on board, like resolve these conflicts here, I'll probably end up recreating them elsewhere. And in the absence of the conflicts, I enjoy where I live. So it's not like I'm in relationship. I was more in relationship with my conflicts and how they cause me to respond to my environment than my direct environment. I enjoy where I live. So I said, okay, I'm going to stay here intentionally to resolve, because definition of conflict resolve is I should be able to be here unconflicted. And so that was one main reason I chose to stay.
fantastic. That's even more powerful, right? Yeah. And was there any smell of mold? Because this is what's tough is that people smell mold or they
Right.
see it, and then that becomes a track in itself and kind of embeds a conflict more and more. But in your case, did you smell and see?
I could only see it, and I did get it cleaned, and that's it.
Right. And so it's here. It's between
Yeah.
the ears. My gosh. Fantastic. So if you had all of those overlapping conflicts, there would have been vomiting, there might have been some skipped heartbeats and
Mhm.
yeah, absence or like the disorientation, rashes you were saying. So you were going what one would have called, well, I have dengue or Lyme disease or something, which is a cluster of conflicts put together and fits the picture that the medical paradigm kind of describes. You would have been maybe diagnosed with some disease and, oh, we have the antidote for you, steroids, medication, and you're going to be hospitalized and whatever. And that
Mhm.
that would have been a spiral, but you got yourself out of that.
I brain fog and insomnia as well, which with mold, the list of symptoms are so long. How
Yeah.
could you not have mold? Anyone that has any symptom can find that symptom in mold.
Exactly, exactly. And then the body pain, right? And of course,
Yeah,
it's like
body. Yeah.
fatigue and everything. And
Yes.
we all know that pain is healing pain in 95% of the SBSs or the biological programs, right?
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, fantastic. I love it. Thank you for sharing that, because then I want people to know that, well, people stay in that cycle and believe
Mhm.
it, and
Mhm.
actually sometimes there are secondary gains about being ill that they also
Mhm.
stay in there. It's the
Mhm.
upside of the downside. I get more benefits for being
Exactly.
sick, and so they stay in that cycle and want to stay there. I love it. So, Brandon, I'm interested in knowing how you found GNM actually, and what was that aha moment for you?
Oh, let's see. I think it was through Dr. Melissa Sell. And I saw some of her content through Alex Zach with The Way Forward. I'm not sure if you're familiar. Yeah. So he was interviewing her, or put a podcast out. Man, just a couple of her podcasts, they just rang so true. And I started, man, that client in 2016 that resolved their IBS, and this one. Wait, that's what it ended. And all of these dots in hindsight started clicking. The moment that really blew my mind though was I was with an ex-partner of mine, and she left. Went to reconcile things with her ex-boyfriend. And I wasn't let's just say I was saying yes when I was actually a no. I was in some people pleasing, scared to lose her. I was so conflict active, and she was my like the only thing in my life. Long story short, I went through like a what I would call like a tower fall moment for maybe 6 months. I stopped working. I had all the health stuff come up, and it was just a lot of what I built over 3 or 4 or 5 years just crumbled in a matter of months, and including a large part of my savings was in crypto. And then the app I was using got sued and I lost $20,000. So all this stuff happened at once and I was like lost. So I was really holding on to her for dear life, which of course what you chase or hold on to runs away and you push away. So at that time, I said, yeah, go ahead and have this experience with your ex partner. And I just had this really bad gut feeling about it. And I couldn't say no. I didn't want to be the controlling one, which what I love about GHK is the paradigm shift in our identity and the acceptance of what it means to be biologically male and female. Because I realize now it's like I was being territorial and I was suppressing my territorial nature to a certain degree. And so she left, and I'm sitting at home, and I really want her close to me. I go, I wish she was here. I just need her to be back. And for those 2 days that she was gone, I and I never experienced this. And it's so interesting because when I traced it all back, I was able to see, oh, leaving the relationship prior put me into a constellation that affected my hormones. And I started going into a female hormonal status. I had an identity conflict and hemorrhoids all around the same time. And so I experienced this anxiety and that I never maybe one time in my life in relationship, really in romantic relationship experience. And it was devastating. And it was like, where are you? Come back. You're with him. I want you to be with me. She comes back. We talk and resolve, and I'm able to embrace her. It was the next morning I woke up with a rash underneath my armpits. So it was like, yeah, I resolved the separation conflict of wanting to embrace her. Literally after I embraced her and my body and psyche, oh, okay, she's yours, she's here, she's close. Okay, you can resolve now. And boom, broke out in a rash underneath. And in that moment, I still wasn't totally bought into GHK. You know, it takes time for so many of us to accept it. But something in me went, don't look to mold or anything else. Just go to GHK. What is this? And I read the description, and word for word, it was, separation conflict, not being able to hold someone close that you want to hold close. It something in that moment, I was like, okay, there's something here. I need to learn everything that I could possibly learn about this.
Love it. Fantastic. And when we look at armpits and shoulders, it's related to, relationships based on your handedness, right or left-handed. But if it's both, it's like hugging someone. My gosh, how fantastic is that? I love it. And so you just dove right in and just, started learning everything you could, I bet.
Yep, that's it. Every podcast. I love Andy's work, dove into Andy's work,
Yes.
Melissa's work, like everything I could find, all the books, all of it. Yeah.
Right. Andy's my first teacher, and I'm right now in the Pilhar Academy educator course. I'm in GHK Global. I'm in Global GHK as well. And also with John Holloway and yeah, all of it just to kind of embrace it. And it's interesting when we talk about relationships, right? Being an appropriate biological masculine and appropriate biological feminine, which is something that is being broached on in something called Freya, which Dr. Sasha, the apprentice of Dr. Hummer, learned from him directly. They studied 800 CT scans together, and he kind of talked about the biology of love to Dr. Sasha. And then Dr. Sasha created this course based on his own experience with women that had conflicts and always had physical diseases. And he figured that I should create a course. And he said that most of the women's diseases come from relationships, because women need relationships to connect, to be protected. They need their community, the gaggle of friends, they need a partner to support them so that they could take care of kids. And he said that the sexual frustration conflict is the most common one among women. So he created a course that would address that. It's so interesting because that conflict ruled my life. And I'm currently husband free and child free because of that conflict.
Mm.
And when I had my CT read, and I just find this so fascinating because only GHK can really tell you this. I had my CT read by him a year ago, and he said, "You menopause too early." Okay, so I'm 52. Left-handers menopause usually at 54,
Mm.
and I had it at 49. And without me telling him anything, he said, "You someone gave you menopause too early 2 years ago."
Mm.
I was 51 then, it happened 49. I mean, it was on the CT. The Hummer focus showed exactly that it happened then. And he said, "It seems like you're still with this guy." And I
Mm.
wasn't, though. I wasn't. That
Interesting.
relationship at 49 lasted 1 month.
Hmm.
And then 2 years had gone by. I'd never talked to him. I was not in any contact with him. But the theory or the possibility your organs still belong to someone,
Mm.
right, was interesting to me.
Mm.
That, and I've had clients since then. I've had clients who are happily married with kids and everything. They look the picture perfect family, but they have prostatitis. But they're,
Mm.
having, great intercourse. They have great relations. But when you investigate further, a relationship 20 years ago where they had an ugly conflict with a female, where she was humiliating him and shaming him and left him for another man. 20 years ago, a girlfriend, his organs still belong to her, or some of it still belongs to
Interesting.
her. Isn't that interesting? That the
Hmm.
organs have their own brain and their own language.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
so cool. And I got my organs back from Freya. Freya.
Wow, really? Did you go through a healing phase specifically for sexual frustration? Or
It's
did you
it.
do another CT scan, or how did you confirm that?
I just knew. It's a
Yeah.
direct cognition. It was just a
Yeah.
download. I'm happy I didn't die of a pulmonary embolism or whatever. Maybe a territorial loss because I'm already hormonally male. But I've been in constellations since then, and constellations decrease the conflict load, and so it kind of protects you from the kill switch, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a direct knowing. And then,
Wow.
there's a feeling of biological femininity coming back and what all that feels like and what all that entails. Kind of like
Mm-hmm.
when I was younger, it felt that way again. So
Mm-hmm.
it was so beautiful. So I figured that might be something helpful for you as well, is the
It's so
ownership
helpful
of
for me.
organ.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting because now so I got my brain scanned by Sasha and he looks at it and he goes, okay, he goes, I want to ask you what book you're writing. And I am writing a book. One of my constellation is a mytho.
If
Yeah, he's like, I think you're writing a book. I was like, that's true. And then he goes, when you were about 17 or 18, you had an experience where it felt like you just couldn't meet anyone's expectations and you like let everyone down. And I broke my collarbone senior year in football, and it was like football was my life, small town, everyone loved football, they knew me for football. And I was like gearing up to have a really, really good year. On our first home game, I broke my collarbone, and my whole senior season and I was really depressed, and it was a major DHS for me. So he was able to see that, 17, which is my senior year, was, and this is interesting. Now I'm gonna have to get my brain scanned again because I just love testing myself. But he goes, your brain tells me, because I go, yeah, I'm in a new relationship. He goes, your brain doesn't say that. Your brain says you're not in a new relationship. And I go, interesting. And I'm thinking about it. I'm like, he's like, do you love her? I was like, yeah, I do. He's like, okay, well, I'm like, but I haven't had sex with her yet. So I did. Had approximately, we didn't make it all the way, but a 3 month no sex. We're gonna really get to know each other and go slow. And I did the scan before we had sex. And he goes, okay, well, that's why a man will consider his woman his territory until he has sex with her. A woman will consider a man his territory as soon as she kisses him, and her brain will start to change. So it's interesting because the organ thing, we've had sex since. I want to get my brain scanned and make sure my organs have moved on from the last one.
my God, I love that. Thank you for Sasha. I want to put his brain on, like, interpret it. He knows so much. It's just insane. And Dr. Hammer would say, like, things when they were studying CT scans together. He would say, you had a child out of wedlock. things
Right.
like that.
That's right.
And so it trumps all fortune tellers,
Mhm.
it trumps all because it's in your brain and it's the truth. And it shows, I mean, it's just so amazing how that happens. Okay, so I wanted to, and I'm wondering if it's okay to talk about channeling, which involves communication with other dimensions, perhaps. Do you believe that there's a place in GNM for this phenomenon to be possible? I mean, I have a couple of constellations in mind, but would
Mhm.
love to hear your own personal perspective on this and maybe how you got started in this.
Yeah, I mean, my perspective, I'll start with GHK and then go to how I got started. But my perspective now is I understand the brain to be an antenna, like a receiver, and constellations can kind of tune that receiver in certain ways. So people have access to certain information and insight and ways of thinking that other people don't based on how the brain is orienting. And so something like a flying constellation, for example, maybe even Mytho, but I think flyers might be more accurate. We might, it's like people will say they'll start to see ghosts, and it's like, is that a effect of the flying constellation? Is Are they projecting an image, or is their brain tuned in a way such that they're able to perceive something others can't see? And it's actually both. It's that spirit may be real, or because I've had maybe 10 or 12 different moments of mediumship as well. That's just random. I'm just in a call, someone brings up a past loved one. I start seeing images and will say things that I could not make up. Okay, tell me about the wedding ring. What did you do to it? Oh my God, I threw it. I cursed his name and I threw it into the lake. And it's like, okay, well, he says, or tell me about the pearl necklace on the picture with the white frame on your bedside table. And oh my God, like, so I go, I can't make that up. So I had to, based on my direct experience, go, okay, there's, some of these constellations, obviously they give us a super sense.
Mhm.
But I'm not able to, it's like constellation isn't necessarily generating the experience. It's revealing the potential for the experience. It's like now I have these glasses on and I can have this kind of experience and other people can have these kind of experiences. And so that's how I've just come to understand it. Now, how I got into it was there's a channel named Bashar. Are you familiar with Bashar?
No, I've heard in circles where they talk about it, like the Indigo Children. I'm part of
Hmm.
that, and so yeah, people converse about, and I've heard
Yeah.
heard, but yeah.
Well, Bashar, his work is so profound because not only does he talk about the nature of reality and more fundamental laws, you can call them metaphysical, which is it's just above even the physical laws, what govern the physical laws. So the absolute baseline fundamental laws. And what's great, there's five, and there's five biological laws, and the way that they fit together is perfect. And he talks about physics to a degree that people like Nassim Haramein, who's a award-winning, recognized like metaphysician or scientist, he would send people to his workshops, and I met them and spoke with them to get information from Bashar to help him with his free energy devices. So this is someone who's incredibly smart and would go to Bashar to have private sessions to help figure out equations and this, and would take that and then apply it in the lab. And so there's just been so much, it's such a deep and rich body of work that through my direct application of the body of work, I got to prove to myself that it works. Applying it in your life works. And that's primarily what led me to my own surrender experiment, where I said, okay, I have this impulse, I'm going to follow it because I understand that life is organizing synchronistically around what I most strongly believe is true about me. I'm going to get that mirrored back to me. And so if I can move through my own constraints in my unconscious and act in my excitement and passion, I will experience the same order that guides the trees and the forest and the synchronicity and everything having a purpose, function, and a place and right timing. I can experience that when I'm being my true, authentic self. There's an order, there's a path that's
Yes.
perfectly exciting and inspiring and brings all forms of support to me. And so it wasn't necessarily in the beginning a really scary thing because I spent years really sitting in, okay, what am I afraid of? What's worst case scenario? What are my fears? What don't I want people to see? And luckily meeting my mentor, I got to really process that through my body for a few years and then went, okay, I'm gonna really dive in. And because his information is channeled, I decided, I want to have a session with him. And it was almost impossible to it still is really hard to get a one-on-one session with Lanka, who channels Bashar. But one summer, maybe in 2018, I was able to get a session. And in that session, he said, you have a counterpart in our society that wants to channel through you if you want to do it. And I said, well, I don't know how. And he goes, well, recommended techniques and people to learn from. He's like, learn how to get into the state and then just start doing it. Just start doing it. If it excites you, just start doing it. It'll come through. So I spent about a year and a half maybe channeling being called Shaka, which is part of this Asasani society that Bashar is a part of. And probably channeled 2 to 4 times a week. I mean, there's like 2 to 3 hours each. A lot of information and charts and graphs and all this stuff for about a year and a half. And then as I resolved that relationship and exited the relationship, I lost all desire channel. So as I came out of that constellation, I just went, okay, I'm done. The passion, the excitement just went away.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I was just going to ask if you were in that state, that constellated, conflicted state.
Wait, yeah, I mean, I asked Josh, I said, am I a flyer? And he goes, no, but you're a mytho. I see the mytho here. So either maybe he was looking for an active constellation and he didn't look for something that was previously resolved. So I don't know exactly what constellation was alive at that time.
How interesting. It could be so many things. And what I find interesting about all of this work is actually when you know GHK enough and you have this great self-awareness, you could actually activate tracks, like step on a track deliberately to open up a talent or a gift, like to turn it on and off, like a faucet. So if it serves you now, I'm going to step on a track and I'm going to get in there. And then when I'm done, I'm going to get out of it. I mean, that is like a superpower, right? And in fact, Sasha told me that he had one client who was a director, and I believe it was Flying Constellation, and he resolved it somehow, and he got out of the constellation, and he lost his gifts. He lost his ability to direct and to envision and to see the problem and see the solution before a problem and things like that. And so he asked Sasha, can I get back into it? And Sasha said, yeah, go to a war zone. And he did, and he got it back. It is pretty interesting how we could, use this information to serve us.
Right.
Find that interesting. Did you have any tinnitus, or, I mean, when you channel, do you hear voices, or does it just the dispensation just comes through you?
Yeah, it just comes through. It's so fast that it's not like I'm hearing and then reporting on what I'm hearing. It's just they're one. So it's just it's pure, it's complete flow state. Time is like that. It feels like I'm kind of in the back seat a bit, like in the back of a backstage being. But again, it doesn't feel like anything foreign. It just feels like more of me, if anything. Sometimes things will be said and I'm having insight and realization at the same time things are being said. So I'm having my own experience going, that's why, or I might be seeing geometry or things like this. Like I'm having kind of an coexisting experience.
Fantastic. This is not alien to me.
And the tinnitus is interesting. I was asked by Sasha with the tinnitus. I will every once in a while have some ringing in the ears, but it's just like it comes up and then it goes down. I don't have consistent tinnitus. Is that part of the flying constellation?
It's a hearing constellation, but it's the one where you would hear voices. And actually, Sasha told me, because I also have a hearing conflict, but it's half resolved. Also because I'm more hormonally male, so the right side is more open. And so he said, when I was a kid, you must have heard voices. Ask your mom. Well, my mom's gone, but I couldn't have asked her. But he said very early on, you must have heard voices. Because he saw it. But I still have tinnitus and I forget now which ear. I think the right ear now. But yeah, he would have said if you heard voices, that might have been the consolation or the conflict.
Interesting. Okay.
Is that interesting?
Yeah, it really is.
Now, would you be interested to get back into channeling, or do you just feel that?
I've lost like primary the interest I had at the time, the passion that I had at the time. I don't necessarily have it. It was also the information is so profound, but it's so ingrained into my conscious psyche. If you just ask me, I'm gonna have a extremely similar answer to the channeling state anyway. So there was also it just felt like a level of integration. We'll just make it meta for a second. It was
Mhm.
so in the conflict active version it was new, exciting, and I need to put this out. As I started to resolve the conflicts, I also started to apply the information more honestly. So there was this like as above, so below integration that happened, and I go, okay, that just kind of feels complete. But I will every once in a while I have people that reach out and say, oh, will you do a channeling for me? And if I really feel a spark of inspiration, I'll say yes, and a track potentially for me is probably the process of meditation that I developed where there's a certain symbol, a certain way of breathing, and it's been the same every single time from the beginning because can get into this state pretty strongly that way.
Wow. Okay. So you pretty much are able to get in and out of it without a
Mhm.
track or without. Oh wow. That's it. I mean, you just up leveled yourself, right? I mean,
Yeah, totally, totally. I didn't even think about it that way. Yeah.
amazing. And so, it kind of veered away from well, your work is integrative self-inquiry. So I wanted to ask, could you describe what that entails and how GNM sort of shifted your practice, GHK shifted your practice?
Yeah. So inquiry. So what I love about inquiry, specifically somatic inquiry, the first layer is I help people. Well, I'll find any moment, and this has worked in my case. I don't know if you've had experience in this way, but I don't believe you need to find the original DHS to help someone resolve because I notice with people they're going to recreate that DHS over and over in their lives. If it was formed in with their mother, eventually it's going to recreate itself in their intimate relationship and maybe even in friendships over and over archetypally. And so we'll find one moment that represents DHS, and obviously I'll use their symptoms in the map of GHK to find a good starting point there, but it doesn't necessarily need to be something at 3 or 5, or they don't need to have the recall, especially if it's a separation conflict and they've forgotten it. So we'll find some form of its reincarnation. And then inquiry susses out the identity that's beneath perception. So and this is kind of how I've mapped it is we have our identity, and our identity sounds like I am this or I am not that. So I am bad, I am wrong, I am a failure, I'm not worthy, I'm not safe, I'm not loved. There's maybe 10 to 15 identities, people of different language, really at the root of all conflicts. So for example, if someone's in I'll use one. I just had one of the client this morning that was really good. I use this one. I'm not safe. So if someone grew up and they had moment after moment of feeling not safe, they're going to continue, that pattern will prove itself right in their life. They're going to continue to attract people and circumstances to prove to themselves that they're not safe. When they believe that on autopilot at no fault of their own, this is unconscious mind. And I would assert that we come in with these constraints. So we come in preloaded in the womb with some of the foundational identities that we're going to play out for the rest of our life. And our circumstances aren't necessarily primary cause, but they're revealing the conditioning that causes us to perceive instantaneously and assume something to be true about me that would make my life seem to be in danger, that would make something like a special biological program relevant. So if I'm not safe, I'm going to keep attracting people that want to control me or that may threaten me or at least I'll feel threatened by. But my search for safety in someone else or in a circumstance or in money, the underlying cause of why I keep ending up in dangerous scenarios. And so it's like I use this example a lot. If someone had a loud neighbor and they were experiencing some territory anger, maybe had some indigestion, acid reflux, they would, if we start at the physical level, we'll just move or have a conversation with that neighbor and you'll resolve. And that's true. That you will probably resolve. But what I find is you're going to keep recreating that neighbor throughout your life, most likely. So let's go not just for resolution, but for freedom as well, which is this underlying identity that's the actual issue, which let's just say for them, and it's different for everyone, that the identity that was arising in response to neighbor is I'm not safe. So I'll take them back into that moment through questioning, through feeling, through finding what moment has most energy on it, most charge on it. We'll find kind of the loudest identity. And we'll have them start to question, okay, were you angry at the neighbor? Or did you have a belief that you were unsafe? And when you believe that, look at who you become, how you react, what your behaviors are, what do you do, and zoom out. And most people with chronic conditions have been playing out a chronic way of being their entire life. It's just being accentuated because of their neighbor. But when they really zoom out, they go, oh my God, I played this out with my partner, with my parents. And there's this chronic way of being and living. And we go, okay, what's caused your suffering? The neighbor or the I'm not safe? And then who you become in response, which could be a really angry person. You could be, maybe you become manipulative or a people pleaser or all of these patterns of dysfunction. And so once they see the bigger picture, it's like, okay, was this, one second, having all these pop-ups. Once we start to, in a healthy way, disassociate their internal response from the actual physical event, and they start to see, okay, it wasn't necessarily the neighbor's loud noises. It was, as a kid, my parents would yell and I would feel really unsafe. And it wasn't even my parents yelling. It was me sitting in my room believing I'm not safe because I relied on them for shelter and food. And my biology says if I'm not safe here, I'm gonna die, so it's going to adapt. So what was that, my parents and the yelling that caused the fear, or was it this automatic, innocent context, identity that came on in that moment? You're not safe. And then where the mind went, usually images of the future. Not gonna be supported. I'm gonna be attacked. I'm gonna be alone. Is it reality or our thinking and believing about reality cause my suffering? And once they start to separate what happened from their thinking and believing about what happened, that one layer of separation creates a lot of space. Then they can start to actually see, is it true? Is it a fundamental fact about that I'm not safe? Am I just built that way? Is that in my biology somewhere, written on DNA somewhere? Or is that just a thought that I've innocently assumed and's been unconsciously running my life for my entire life for most people? And once they start to discover their context, it's like taking off blue tinted glasses and go, I've been looking at life through these blue tinted glasses, but if I were to ask you what blue is, you couldn't tell me. You'd say that this is just normal. Then you take them off and you go, that's what blue is. I've been seeing blue my entire life. And because I felt not safe, I've constantly sought safety. So I inevitably end up in a relationship where I'm not feeling safe and recreating the same conflicts over and over. But in the absence of I'm not safe, I would never attract that relationship in the first place. I would never, feel reactively anxious around that neighbor in the first place. Maybe I'd be able to sit here and they'd be loud and I just would turn on music and dance. I don't know what I would do in the absence of I'm not safe. So that's why it's so powerful is you get to put people back in the scenarios, the absence of an identity that informs a dysfunctional behavior that reinforces conflict, and they get to be there in the absence of it, and there's no conflict. Then from there, they can either have a conversation or move or stay. But the fact that they feel like they have a choice, I can stay here and there's no anger anymore, or I can leave. That's resolution because they've a return sense of choice, which we only feel threatened if we feel like we don't have a choice. It's either this or die. And so, that's the basis of inquiry. It's not necessarily a modality as much as it is an understanding of applied wisdom. It's like any time that I'm suffering, I'm believing, I'm buying in to some unconscious persona that has to view this as a conflict. And in the absence of that persona, there's no conflict. And so this is about a death I said this in the beginning of a course I just launched last week. I'm a murderer. That's what I do. But I'm not doing the murdering. You are. When we see this aspect of self that we've played out for so long, when that's resolved, it's a new self in the same scenario. And that's the true test of resolution, that I can respond totally different to a scenario that previously I felt or conflicted about.
My gosh, it is so elegant. It's something I think it's so powerful as well. And it's something I call like atomic. That it
Mm-hmm.
seems to be so subtle, but the
Mm-hmm.
waves are huge. The blast radius is immense. All areas of life. And I practice something called Psyche, which is a belief change modality. And we go through sessions that are, quite long. It's to find the core beliefs that were written on your wall since you were in the womb, and then to overturn them, and then to change your life that way. But that takes a whole hour. But for you, it seems like you're co-creating the process of resolution with your healing partner, and it seems also like you're training them to shift from an inefficient thought pattern to a more efficient one. And it seems like when they kind of embody this kind of efficient thought pattern, they could apply it to all sorts of thinking in other conflicts as well, or
Absolutely.
future conflicts that come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you an example. This is so profound. So I had a woman today who she was in an info constellation early on, and she would find herself in all of these like procare situations with men with wives, and just having sex with men, and seeking connection, feeling really ashamed about it. And it was something that she's just held in. I don't want anyone to know, and I'm not going to. I have to hold it in. Of course, that she developed an indigestible morsel. So there's two primary, like I call them either identities or contexts. I'll use context because I think it really encapsulates two contexts that she's been living under since she was a child. One is I'm not loved, and one is I'm bad. And as soon as we found those, which the way I do it is I'll ask the question, what must you believe to be true about you in order to be feeling that way? Or what kind of person does what you did? And if you kind of imagine it on someone else, you go, oh, that's someone that's bad, or that's someone that's this, or, what must be true about you in order to, make this choice or that choice. And your first impression is typically your unconscious mind. So I'll say, trust your first impression, ask and see what comes. And so we found those two. And as soon as she was able to identify them, earlier memories just bubbled up. Oh, I remember this one time I just felt so bad. I was, dancing in front of the TV, and my dad's like, get out of the way, da da da. And I just felt like I'm just doing something bad. And this other time I felt so unloved. And so we go, okay, in the absence of I'm not loved and I'm bad, I wouldn't seek love in a relationship, in a man, because that's where she learned that she got it. So it was in the absence of I'm not loved, I wouldn't need to search for it in that way. And in her way, it would be with sex, but mainly with attention. Especially because in that moment, it was like she was just wanting her dad's attention. So in the absence of needing that attention, conflicts resolved or conflicts prevented. I'm bad would create that sense of guilt, and I can't share this. So that's going to create the indigestible morsel. And what was her other symptom? She had one more. I mean, I know she was working with self-evaluation as well, but let's just look at those two together. I'm not loved, major self-evaluation. I'm bad. Now I can't share it because it's shameful and guilty. So indigestible morsel. When those two pop, now she goes, oh my God, I can share this. I can share this with my partner. I could share this even with my parents. I could let everyone know because I know that I'm not bad and I'm not loved. And so in the absence of both of those things, I'm just sharing what happened. And what happened is never the problem. Or thinking about what happened is the problem. So now I'm just catching up with reality and experiencing the kindness of reality. My problem wasn't with what I did. It was my identity. And so once that was resolved, I mean, she was getting nauseous on the call. She's like, oh, I'm getting really nauseous. Like, you're passing the morsel. So now don't go have these conversations in order to resolve. Resolve here the identity, and then go live how that identity would live your relationships to integrate.
Wow. Fantastic. And when we look at therapy in GHK, the purists, of course, will say it's only causal therapy. It has to be a direct biological solution. For example, if your wife died, the biological solution would be to find a new wife. Things of that need. I mean, how easy is it to find a new wife and find a wife? It's so complicated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the other is then a perceptual solution, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is really more practical and could really help a lot of people. Is that which is kind of what you're doing, is to kind of reframe it and for people to shift their pattern from inefficient to efficient, which I think
Mm-hmm.
is also something that I do with my work. So it's fantastic. I love. Thank you so much for giving those real life experiences, or real life examples rather.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's almost been an hour. So I'm just gonna. Here you go. Okay. Well, what do you envision for the future of healing modalities like GHK, integrative self inquiry, and how do you
Yeah.
see them evolving?
That's so good. So this concept of like a hospital, right? Like a place where sick people go. I imagine, I mean, first of all, I love that GHK is kind of decentralized in the sense that we're all just finding it and proliferating it and sharing it. And there's not like one organization that's controlling everything. Like it really, I feel like it has to be something that the people choose. And also the people end up creating their own high standard of what does it look like to be a GHK practitioner. There is a type of the deeper you go into GHK, the more love you're going to experience, forgiveness, the less conflict. It will be, whether you like it or not, a doorway to the sacred, to beauty, to goodness, and it will deepen other spiritual traditions. I mean, if you were previously or are like a Christian, for example, you might be able to see the healings that Jesus performed as you would really understand them. But even in that case, it still will leave room, which I think this is a sign of a mature practitioner. It'll leave room for not knowing, instantaneous healings where they have, scans of cancer just that's still not necessarily explained by GHK. So it's like as long as there's an openness and we don't become rigid, which I think can happen with look at here's all this knowledge, now you know it all, it's so in depth, it's so detailed, it's so complex. As long as there's an openness and it doesn't become dogmatic, I think people are going to swarm to GHK because of the truth. You can't keep people away from what's true and good and beautiful for long because it has such a magnetic field to it. So I think it will expand tremendously. But I think the idea, like I was referring to with hospitals, is like a whole clinic, the idea of a clinic, a hospital, of just healing in general, changed to such a degree that we just by sitting down and having a conversation with someone, things like cancer, diabetes, arthritis. I had a woman with level 8 pain every day, and in one session it went down to a level 4, and her felt her hands the next day and said, "What did you do different this week?" She goes, "What do you mean?" "I just did my normal physical therapy." She goes, "All of the fascia in your hand has released." Both of
Wow.
your, he goes, "Well, I did this session, this inquiry thing with Brandon." So that we made a major dent in her self-evaluation in that moment. And so just the power of what we believe to be true, what it means to live biologically. I mean, the results will speak to themselves, that it will have to build to a tipping point that the people themselves will just decide to starve the old system. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't work. That's based on an old narrative of victim, perpetrator, savior. We're the victims, the germs are the perpetrators, this hospital's the savior. That doesn't make sense. This is kind of Stone Age stuff, with the exception of like the acute, situations and breaking bones and whatnot. But I think that it'll just be a kind of a starving of what's not relevant anymore as this information gets out there. But I think the next phase is going to be on resolution. Like, yes, it's going to be on teaching GHK, but I think there needs to be an emphasis, the practices of resolution that have been most successful, and some sort of alliance around, okay, what works. Let's look at the case studies. This worked for them. What is your, like, some sort of alliance is just the word that comes to mind. The best ways to resolve and what's working, and how we can update any of the information based maybe even just on the language. Dr. Hammer was spoken German, so some of the translations. So it's like, oh, digestible morsel or indigestible anger that could,
Mm.
for some people, I had a client and it was indigestible shame. That was the main thing. It was shame. And when she, I feel so ashamed of it, boom, it completely released. And so it's like just, in short, it's very bright. And I think there's going to be more and more focus on the application of resolution that I think is so important.
I love everything that you said. And I think it's kind of in the works because there's a clinic in Nicaragua that's being set up. And
Wow.
really interested in that and just to see how it can be established in the Philippines. But what you're envisioning is already sort of coming true. That's
Totally.
our
Yeah.
wish. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and I love what you said about applying, knowing the conflicts and what creates conflicts in people, or what what activates conflicts, and then to know how to be conciliatory, or to know how to use that to prevent it, or to improve your relationships, or change how you see money as the most important thing, or how you fight about it and your family, and things of that nature. For me, it all boils down to relationships and communication.
Mhm.
That's like the gift of GHK, because it doesn't matter that you know GHK. So it's not just teaching GHK, but it's to apply it, to apply it to your life. Dr. Hummer is a founder, and he passed away. He was ridden with conflicts, and he knew what were causing his own conflicts, but he was at the end, he succumbed to them, right? And Helmut Pilhar also passed away under the same kind of circumstances. And so kind of what we want to do is to up level, somehow use that information to live longer and to live better
Mm,
and to be better
mm,
humans, right?
mm,
So
mhm.
yeah, I love your vision. I definitely do. Usually I ask this last question, and you kind of maybe answered a little bit of it, but if you were to have a magic wand and that wand clicked into the perfect world, what would that world look like for you?
It would be a person, moment by moment, and personal impulse of their deepest passion and joy and curiosity and full trust and surrender that would allow the self-organizing force of reality, like I mentioned before, what organizes the trees and our biology and all of these programs, that organizing force, we can call it God, guide to be the primary guide of our lives moment by moment. And I believe that would look like a symphony. It would be like perfect music. It's like when I'm not in tune with that, I'm hitting a sour note. But when I'm in tune with that as an individual, I experience flow. When I'm in tune with that with another individual, I experience intimacy and love and union. When I experience that with the collective, I mean, we haven't experienced that yet. So I experience a collective kind of love and flow and synergy of us being a truly whole organism while honoring all of the individuated parts. So it's some form of the complete giving over to that self-organizing force that is really something I don't think humanity has seen yet. But
I
I
love.
do believe our biology is literally wired to that potential to live that way. It's like we get in our brains go into gamma when we're in hyperflow, and there's an anti-aging effect and a memory improvement and recall. I mean, we just get optimized when we're in that flow state. And I believe as group world flow state would be kind of living like a fairy tale, but very not a flyer kind of fairy tale, in like a wow, life is magical. Look how we all need each other. Look how this all works together, kind of way.
Beautiful. I feel my heart so open right now. It's like I got a session. Thank you so much for that. I really share in that vision, Brandon.
Mm.
And I know that you take consultations and you also have a course. Where can we find you on your platforms?
Yeah. So primarily I'm on Instagram. It's just my first and last name, Brandon Bozarth. And just in my bio, I have my website and links to free content. I also have a free Telegram group, and I have a bunch of different topics and success stories. And it's a really great group. It's only been up for maybe a few months now, but we have about 300 members. So I would recommend joining there as well.
Thank you so much. And I'll make sure to include all of the pertinent links in the show notes. And I wanted to thank you again for gracing us with your presence and your wisdom and knowledge. And maybe we'll have you again another time, just in case you have updates or anything to share.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ellie. This has been really fun.
You're welcome.